My name is Brooke Ellison. I am 31 years old. My father called me the morning of his retirement party and said 7 words that shattered my hope for any change in our family. Don't come to the party. Your older sister doesn't want any drama from me there. I was in my suburban Raleigh apartment holding the phone, the retirement gift I'd carefully chosen, sitting on the table beside me. His tone left no room for questions, and my mother stayed silent in the background as I heard the party preparations. The pain hit me like a wave, reminding me of all the times he had chosen her. But I quietly hung up, put the gift away, and decided that this time I would not chase his approval. But that decision was about to test every bond I had left. If you've ever been excluded by your own father because someone else in the family doesn't want drama, type yes or no in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. That call came on a bright Saturday morning in suburban Raleigh, where I had built a quiet life as a marketing coordinator at a local advertising agency. I had spent the week preparing for my father's retirement celebration, picking out the perfect gift, and even practicing what I would say to toast his years of hard work. But when he delivered that cold exclusion over the phone, it brought back every moment he had made me feel like an afterthought. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wrapped box, the knot in my stomach tightening with the weight of years of the same treatment. My father had always operated this way, using guilt and obligation to keep me in line, while my older sister got the freedom she wanted. When I landed my first big promotion at the agency 3 years ago, he called the night before the announcement party to say I should skip it because my older sister was dealing with a rough patch in her marriage and needed someone to watch her daughter Riley for the evening. "Brooke, you know how sensitive she is right now," he had said, his voice laced with that familiar sarcasm. "Why do you always have to make everything about your little successes? Family comes first, and right now your sister needs the help more than you need a pat on the back." I had stayed home that night, canceling my plans and feeling smaller than ever, but I never confronted him because I knew it would only lead to more lectures about how selfish I was being. The pattern repeated in smaller ways that chipped away at me over time. Last year when I planned a weekend trip with friends to celebrate my 30th birthday, my father found out and insisted I cancel because my older sister wanted the family to help her move into a new house instead. "You're too caught up in your own life," he told me during that call, his words cutting like a knife. "Your sister is building something real, and you're just playing around. Step up for once." My mother never spoke up in those moments. She simply agreed with a quiet sigh, as if my father's decisions were law. I had swallowed the hurt each time, telling myself it was temporary, that one day he might see how much I had sacrificed without complaint. But that retirement party call felt different. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, replaying his words and wondering how many more times I could absorb the blow without breaking. My best friend Amanda Torres stopped by in the afternoon after I texted her the details. Amanda had been my steady support since we met at a work conference 2 years ago, the kind of person who listened without trying to fix everything right away. "Your father can't keep treating you like an accessory to your sister's life," she said over coffee at my kitchen table, her voice steady and sharp. "You've given him enough chances. This time sticking to your decision might be the only way to make him see what he's losing." Her words gave me a small spark of strength, but I could already feel the guilt creeping in the way my father always managed to plant it, so it grew overnight. Later that evening, my colleague, Jordan Mills from the agency, called to check on me because he knew I had taken the day off for the family event. Jordan had become more than a coworker over the past year. He was the one who had helped me land a major client account and always had my back during tight deadlines. "If you need to talk about what happened, I'm here," he said, his tone light but genuine. "Don't let family stuff derail the good things you're building at work." I appreciated the reminder that my life extended beyond my father's reach. Yet even as we talked, my phone buzzed with a group message from my uncle Mark Ellison, who had attended the party. The text mentioned how disappointed my father was that I hadn't shown up and how my older sister had commented that my absence kept things peaceful. It was another small violation, the kind that stacked up until they felt like walls closing in. The next morning brought the first real escalation. I was getting ready for work when my father called again, this time without any greeting. Brooke, your mother told me you stayed home yesterday. He said, his voice dripping with that familiar mix of disappointment and sarcasm. You know how much that hurt your sister. She was counting on the family being together, and you made it all about you like always. When are you going to stop being so selfish and start thinking about what the rest of us need? The jab landed hard, tying directly to the guilt he had cultivated for decades. I tried to explain that I was respecting the boundary he had set, but he cut me off with a laugh that wasn't warm at all. Boundaries. That's just an excuse for you to avoid responsibility. Your sister is pregnant again and she needs help with Riley during the day. You could adjust your work schedule if you cared at all. The demand hung in the air. Another attempt to pull me into his version of family duty. I ended the call feeling drained, but the pressure didn't stop there. By mid-morning at the office, Jordan pulled me aside during a break and mentioned that my father had left a voicemail at the agency front desk, asking if I could take time off for family reasons. He sounded pretty insistent, Jordan said quietly, his eyes showing the confusion I felt. Is everything okay at home? The fact that my father had reached into my professional life added a new layer of unease, making me wonder how far he would go to enforce his control. Amanda texted later that afternoon after I updated her, urging me to talk to a therapist she knew named Dr. Ethan Cole, someone who specialized in family dynamics. It might help you see the pattern clearly, she wrote. You've carried this long enough. I appreciated her push, but the idea of opening up to a stranger about my father's constant coercion felt like admitting defeat. As the week progressed, the small violations kept coming in waves that built the suspense of what might happen next. My father sent a text demanding I pick up Riley from daycare twice a week because my older sister needed rest, and when I hesitated, he followed up with a call laced with guilt. If you really loved this family, you'd do it without question. He said his words sharp enough to sting, but I guess some people only think about themselves. The jab echoed in my mind during meetings at work, distracting me from the client project I was leading. Jordan noticed my distraction and offered to cover a deadline, but the support only highlighted how isolated the situation was making me feel. Then, late one evening, my phone rang with an unknown number that turned out to be my cousin Tyler Ellison, who had heard the family gossip. Your father is telling everyone you're pulling away on purpose, Tyler said, his voice hesitant. He made it sound like you're the one causing the problems. The revelation hit like a mini cliffhanger, leaving me staring at the phone long after he hung up, wondering who else my father had turned against me. The final push of the week came when my father showed up at my apartment door unannounced on Friday evening, his face set in that familiar expression of righteous disappointment. We need to talk about your attitude. He started before I could even invite him in, launching into another lecture about how my decisions were hurting my older sister and the whole family. You've always been too independent for your own good, he added with a sarcastic edge. Time to grow up and contribute like the rest of us. I stood there listening, the weight of his words pressing down, but something in me held firm to the decision I had made the morning of his party. Yet, as he left, slamming the door behind him, I felt the first real crack in my resolve, the quiet fear that this pattern might never end without me losing pieces of myself along the way. What I didn't know yet was how much more he had planned to force my hand. The slam of the door still echoed in my ears as I stood there in the silence of my apartment, the weight of his words pressing down like an invisible hand that refused to let go. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing through the years of similar moments where my father had made me feel like my needs were always secondary to keeping the peace for my older sister. The quiet fear I had felt earlier grew stronger, but I forced myself to focus on the one thing I could control, my decision not to chase his approval anymore. A couple of days later, the pressure ramped up when my father called during my lunch break at the agency. Brooke, I hope you're thinking about what I said. He started, his voice carrying that familiar sarcastic edge that always signaled the psychological jab was coming. Your older sister is expecting again, and Riley needs consistent care after school. Your mother and I think it's time you rearranged your work schedule to help out. Family doesn't wait for your convenience, you know. The demand came with a cutting reminder of how I had always put myself first, making the guilt twist tighter in my chest. I tried to remind him that I had a full-time role with deadlines that couldn't be ignored, but he laughed it off. Deadlines. That's just your way of avoiding responsibility. Your sister never makes excuses like this. She steps up. When are you going to learn that the world doesn't revolve around your little office job? That call left me rattled, and when I returned to my desk, my boss, Sofia Ramirez, noticed my distraction right away. Sofia had mentored me through 3 major campaigns and always kept things professional, but she pulled me into her office with a serious look. Brooke, your father, called the main line again this morning, asking about flexible hours for family reasons. She said quietly, I covered for you this time, but if this keeps happening, it could affect your performance review next month. Is everything okay at home? The revelation that my father had reached straight into my workplace created the first real mini cliffhanger of the week, leaving me wondering how much more professional ground I might lose if he kept pushing. I left work that evening feeling exposed, so I finally took my friend Amanda Torres up on her suggestion and booked a session with Dr. Ethan Cole, the therapist she swore by for family patterns like this. During that first hour, he helped me name the coercion without sugarcoating it. But even as I walked out feeling a little steadier, my phone lit up with a text from my cousin, Tyler Ellison. Your father is telling everyone you're pulling away on purpose and leaving your sister in a tough spot, he wrote. Just thought you should know before the next family gathering. The gossip spreading through the relatives added another layer of suspense, making me question who else my father had already turned against me with his version of events. The next escalation came that same weekend when my older sister's husband, Derek Collins, showed up at my door unannounced, his face set in the same disappointed mask my father wore so well. Derek had always echoed my father's views in family matters, and he didn't waste time getting to the point. Your father asked me to stop by because you're not answering his calls, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Your older sister is exhausted with this pregnancy, and Riley keeps asking why Aunt Brooke won't help. It's starting to look like you're choosing your job over the family again. That's not the Brooke we know. The jab landed with practiced precision, another psychological twist that made me feel like the outsider in my own bloodline. I explained that I was protecting the boundaries I had finally set, but Derek just shook his head with a sarcastic chuckle. Mondare. That's a fancy word for selfishness. Your father is right. You've always been the one who makes everything harder than it has to be. Derek's visit left me drained, and the following Monday at the agency brought the second mini cliffhanger I had been dreading. Sofia Ramirez called me into her office again, this time with a printed email in her hand. Your father sent this to HR yesterday, she said, sliding the paper across the desk. He's requesting your schedule be adjusted for family caregiving duties and copied me on it. I'm not involving myself in personal matters, but if this continues, it could be seen as a conflict of interest. The high-stakes reality that my father was now using official channels to interfere with my livelihood hung in the air, forcing me to realize how far he was willing to go to enforce the role he had assigned me. By midweek, the small violations had snowballed into something heavier. My father started texting daily reminders about picking up Riley, and when I didn't respond fast enough, he looped my mother in with a 3-way call. Your father is really hurt by your silence, she said in that quiet, agreeing tone she always used, never once challenging him. He only wants what's best for all of us. Meanwhile, Jordan Mills, my colleague, who had become a steady sounding board, offered to cover a client meeting so I could breathe. But even his support couldn't hide the growing tension when Sophia pulled me aside again to warn that another HR note had arrived. The pattern was clear. Every refusal from me triggered another move from my father, each one sharper and more public than the last. The final push of that week came on Thursday evening when my father texted the entire family group chat, including my uncle Mark and cousin Tyler, announcing a necessary discussion about family responsibilities. Brooke needs to hear this from all of us. The message read, and right below it, my father added his own line that cut deepest of all. Some people think they can walk away from their obligations and still call themselves part of this family. The words sat on my screen like a timed threat, building the suspense of what that group call might unleash, and making me wonder if the isolation I had chosen to protect myself was about to cost me everything I had left. I stared at the phone long after the messages stopped coming, the crack in my resolve widening into something that felt dangerously close to breaking. What I didn't know yet was how quickly my father would force the issue into the open and whether I would still have the strength to hold the line when he did. The group discussion my father had announced in the family chat happened the very next evening, pulling everyone onto a video call that felt like an ambush from the start. My screen filled with familiar faces, my mother Evelyn Ellison nodding along quietly in the background, my older sister Lauren Collins looking exhausted with her hand resting on her growing belly. Her husband Derek Collins beside her, my uncle Mark Ellison and cousin Tyler Ellison watching from their own homes, and even my aunt Laura Ellison who had joined at the last minute hoping to keep things civil. I sat alone in my apartment with the camera on, heart pounding, knowing this was the moment my father Robert Ellison had been building toward all week. He wasted no time taking control, his voice carrying that familiar sarcastic bite that always signaled the real attack was coming. Brooke, we're all here because your refusal to help with your sister's needs is creating unnecessary drama again. He started leaning into the camera with a disappointed shake of his head. You've always been the one who puts your little marketing job first, acting like the rest of us don't matter. Your sister is pregnant. Riley needs stability. And instead of stepping up like family, should you're hiding behind boundaries that sound more like excuses? When are you going to stop being so selfish? And remember who raised you? The jab landed with practiced precision, laced with the guilt he had perfected over years, and I could see my mother and Aunt Laura exchanging uneasy glances, while Lauren nodded in silent agreement. I tried to keep my voice steady as the pressure mounted, explaining that I had already given up promotions and weekends for the family's sake, and couldn't keep sacrificing my career without losing everything I had worked for. But my father cut me off with a sharp laugh that echoed through the call. Career. That's rich coming from someone who can't even show up for a retirement party without making it about herself. Your Aunt Laura here tried to tell me you might need space, but I know better, you're just avoiding responsibility again. Aunt Laura shifted uncomfortably on screen, murmuring something about giving everyone time to cool off, but my father steamrolled right over her. No, Laura, we've enabled this long enough. Brooke, if you want and adjust your schedule to help with Riley after school twice a week, then maybe it's time you reconsider whether you even belong in these family decisions anymore. The words hung there like a threat, creating the first real mini cliffhanger of the evening as everyone waited for my response. Something inside me finally snapped into place, not with anger, but with a quiet clarity I had never felt before. Dad, I love this family, but I won't let you control my time, my job, or my peace anymore. I said the words flowing out naturally after all the sessions with Dr. Ethan Cole and the steady advice from my best friend Amanda Torres. I've spent years shrinking myself to keep the peace for Lauren, but that ends now. I'm setting this boundary. You can't demand I rearrange my life, and if that means stepping back from the constant pressure, then that's what I have to do. The call went silent for a bit. My cousin Tyler looking shocked, while Derek muttered something about me always making things difficult. My father's face hardened on screen, his next words delivered with cold finality. If that's how you want to play it, Brooke, then fine. We've tried everything, but if you're choosing yourself over us, don't expect us to keep chasing you. Some people just aren't cut out for real family. The second mini cliffhanger hit when the call ended abruptly, after that my screen going dark, as one by one the faces disappeared without a goodbye. I sat there staring at the blank monitor, the weight of his dismissal settling over me like a heavy blanket I couldn't shake off. In the days that followed, the isolation started creeping in exactly as I had feared. My phone stayed quiet, no texts from Lauren asking about Riley, no calls from my mother checking in, no updates from Uncle Mark or Tyler about family plans. Even Aunt Laura sent one short message saying she understood my side, but thought it was best not to get caught in the middle, then went silent too. The family group chat went dormant, as if I had been quietly erased from the conversation without any formal announcement. At work, the tension followed me in a different way when Carla Bennett from HR pulled me aside after reviewing the emails my father had sent. "We've noted the interference from your family member," she said professionally, her tone kind but firm. "We've blocked further contact to protect your role here, but if this affects your focus, we may need to discuss accommodations or adjustments." Jordan Mills and Sofia Ramirez offered quiet support in the office, covering meetings when I needed a moment to breathe, and Amanda Torres stopped by with takeout one evening to remind me I wasn't alone in the fight. But even their kindness couldn't fill the growing emptiness at home, the weekends that stretched long without any family obligations or invitations pulling me back in. Months turned into a full year, and the silence from my father's side became complete. There were no more demands, no sarcastic jabs, no surprise visits, just an absence that echoed louder than any argument ever had. Lauren had a baby without a single message to me. Riley's birthday came and went with no card or call, and my mother's occasional holiday texts stopped altogether after I politely declined one last request to think about coming around for everyone's sake. I kept my job at the agency, even earned a small promotion that felt hollow without anyone to share it with, and Dr. Ethan Cole helped me process the loneliness in weekly sessions that reminded me why I had chosen this path. Yet every quiet evening in my apartment, the reality settled deeper. I had protected my boundaries, but the cost was the family-shaped hole that nothing else could quite fill. Looking back now, I realize my father's control had always been about keeping me in the role he assigned: reliable helper, silent supporter, never equal. By refusing to shrink anymore, I had forced the issue into the open, but the outcome left me standing on my own in a way I hadn't fully prepared for. No dramatic reconciliation, no new support network stepping in to replace what was lost, just the peaceful but lonely knowledge that I had finally stopped letting his expectations define me. It wasn't a victory that felt triumphant. It was simply survival, the kind that comes with empty chairs at holidays and unanswered questions about whether they ever truly missed the daughter they pushed away. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. It still feels raw to share, but telling it helps remind me why those boundaries matter.